Okay, so now let's think about how we're going to actually evaluate facts. So we've talked about ways of measuring poverty, we've talked about ways of measuring income inequality or income mobility, and that's sort of a scientific task, how we measure things. Now let's think about evaluation. So here we're getting into the realm of sort of philosophy and politics and that kind of stuff. And I think sort of the default the default way that economists are most likely to look at the world is what's called a utilitarian framework. So utilitarianism comes about sort of in the late 1700s and early 1800s, about the same time that economics is being born. And the basic idea of utilitarianism, and there's a couple different variants here, is maximize average happiness, which sounds very sensible. And sort of very, sensible and simple, and let's just do that, and why wouldn't we do that? When we actually go and start doing this, some unexpected problems arise. The first one is basically, how do you measure happiness? So that's sort of an implementation problem. How do we do that? There are sort of some deeper problems, which essentially, do we treat happiness the same across individuals? Even if we could measure a certain individual's happiness, suppose there's one person who's sort of either really, really happy about things or really, really unhappy about things, and other people are a little bit more even-keeled. Are we saying that the happiness of the person who is sort of emotionally volatile counts for more than the person who's a little bit more emotionally stable, I guess you'd call it? And basically, yeah, if we're looking at utilitarianism, we would say yes. The people who don't care that much, we shouldn't take their welfare into account as much as the people who really care a lot. I think utilitarianism also makes what is right a little bit more dependent upon social scientific facts than we're really comfortable with. And what do I mean by that? Suppose it were the case, I'm not saying it is the case, but suppose it were the case that a 1950s society where, husbands were primary breadwinners and women stayed at home and raised kids made people happier on average. Maybe it made the women unhappy, but maybe the men were really happy, and maybe it was really good for children to have stable home lives and so on and so forth. Well, if it maximizes average happiness to restrict women's activities, then a utilitarian is going to say, well, then that's what we should do, because we need to maximize average happiness. Utilitarianism also doesn't really have a good way of worrying about things like fairness or justice. The extent to which there's fairness or justice is, well, everyone's feelings are taken equally into account, at least insofar as they have the equal intensity of feeling. So utilitarianism doesn't sort of get into questions of, do people deserve their economic rewards? Or do they not? Are there things like basic rights or not? Utilitarianism basically says everything comes down to just this one principle, and if something doesn't serve that one principle, it's not really directly relevant. So I think utilitarianism has something important to say, and I think we would want to give utilitarian considerations some weight. We wouldn't want to just say we shouldn't pay any attention to whether or not an action or a policy impacts people's average level of happiness at all. But I think it really oversimplifies and takes out of consideration a lot of things that are really, really important to us. So that is utilitarianism.